So, Robin, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are at right now in your massage life.
In my Esalen Massage life. Well, so I live in Asheville, North Carolina, which is, on the southeast coast of the United States. And where I'm at now in my career is primarily in my teaching career. So I have been practicing Esalen massage for 33 years. And I spent 16 of those years at the Esalen Institute giving massages full time. And now I own my own business in Asheville, and we focus primarily on Esalen massage as an offering, in addition to some other offerings like saltwater flotation, sensory deprivation tanks, and somatic psychology, and classes and workshops. So my career has shifted a lot away from private practice, although I still have a few regular clients that I see um, weekly, but primarily my focus has been on teaching.
Mhm.
And over the last, I would say, 10 years. So
Mm.
that's where I'm at with my career now. And of course, about a year ago, I stepped into the role as the chairperson for the Esalen Massage and Bodywork Association, filling Brita Ostrom's shoes in that respect.
Great. So, I'm
Yeah.
curious, those many, many years ago, what drew you to the Esalen Institute?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, honestly, it was my mother that drew me to the Esalen Institute. In my early 20s, right when I was in college, my mom had a lifelong dream to go to the Esalen Institute. She would get the catalogs when we were little. I wasn't so aware of that, but this is what she told me. She would always get the catalogs. At that time, they were sending hard copy catalogs out. And it was just on her radar, the Esalen Institute, when we were kids. And it's something she always wanted to do. And in 1991, she was living with my younger brother in Oakland, California. They had moved from the Midwest, where we grew up, to Oakland, California. And our house was in the Oakland fire of 1991. Our house burnt down, and we lost everything that we owned at the time. And it really became, while it was a tragedy on the one hand, we really took it as an opportunity for a catalyst for change. And so it was this opportunity where we suddenly had no possessions, to make some change in our lives. And the change that my mom chose to make was to go to Esalen and become a work scholar. And my brother and I, at that time, decided to go to British Columbia and study organic farming. And so we all went our different directions and did just something completely different. And so we decided to go visit her at the Esalen, this mysterious place that we'd kind of heard of, but were unfamiliar with. And that's really what got me to the Esalen Institute, was visiting my mom with my brother. And then once there, we stepped into that work scholar group program, which essentially at the time you spent a month at Esalen working in a department and then learning something. You had a class. And so we did that, and we each did that for 3 months. And one of those months was a massage program with David Streeter, who was an old-time Esalen practitioner, and that began my journey of learning massage. And then I really quickly got a massage at Esalen, like everybody typically does when they're there. That's what everyone's doing. And having been a trained dancer, I had a lot of holding in my body from my lifetime of formal dance. And so very quickly, my body started to change and unravel, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally. And I was very intrigued by what was happening to me in receiving massage. So that hooked me in from that perspective of the receiver. And then I really wanted to learn what was happening. Why was I having these big emotional releases, and my very tight turnout, my ballet turnout was starting to shift and in good ways, and so it really drew me into a lot of curiosity and beginning to study massage when I was there in those first few months.
Mm. And can you remember, were there difficult times learning Esalen massage? Were there any, challenges? How did you feel? How did you handle it?
Yeah, I mean, sure, I having no, like, formal training in anatomy or any of that, my primary training was in dance and movement, and along with, what I was studying in college, which was photography and advertising, very different. I felt like I was very inspired, and I was also a little overwhelmed, honestly. It was like this whole world that I was, like, exploring that I knew very little about, in terms of, anatomy and those sorts of things. So, yeah, it was exciting. I would say more than challenging. I think the challenges arose for me when my skill level surpassed my knowledge level. And so I started getting very skilled at touching people and helping them start to unravel, if you will, some of these body holding patterns, which was being done to me. So I was able to duplicate that. But without the psychological background and the physiological background of understanding what I was doing, I would definitely get myself into some situations that I didn't know how to handle with clients. And so that was the challenge, I think, ultimately. But I also was in the supportive environment of Esalen, and I had many mentors at the time that I was working really closely with. So I felt a lot of support. And then I was also able to further my education, not only at Esalen through teachers and workshops, but there was a community college close by. So I started studying more anatomy and really it helped support all of my learning. And then, of course, being at Esalen, a lot of psychology and Gestalt specifically. So I could start to understand that more psychological component of uh, what was happening with people, So it was a little bit of this like dance of like, opening doors that I didn't quite know how to handle and then getting the education to figure out like what's happening and how do I handle this better. So it was a very creative process for me.
And who would you say were your most important mentors who influenced your work at the table?
Gosh, I had a lot. Like I mentioned, David Streeter was my first teacher, and I had a lot of respect for David. Um, He was, a Tai Chi master and a Zen monk and also just a cool guy. And so I really, learned a lot from him. Um, but then Brita Ostrom and Dean Marson were my first certification teachers. I had a few really primary influences. One was a man named Ray Swartley, and I was getting a lot of massages from him and we started this small group, essentially, of students that were really interested in more that somatic body work, really working with the emotional components that start to present themselves when, in the context of massage and body work. And we would meet 2 or 3 times a week in this small group. I think there were like three of us and him, and work on each other and talk. And he was a amazing human being and character, honestly, and really had a broad interest and background and lots of things that were very alternative. And so I learned a lot just being in his presence, but also working on people, on each other with him and being worked on with him and in this small group. And so I spent several years doing that really closely. I really appreciated that model of like small group or one-on-one mentorship and really was able to use that to really explore some avenues that where I was very interested in. And then in addition to him, I did something similar with a woman named Suzanne Skurlock. and she is a craniosacral therapist and teacher, and I got really interested in craniosacral therapy as well, but she too was very involved in the somatic emotional component of massage, and I did something very similar with her. I She would come to Esalen every year for about a month. Was really useful for me because I got a real, like, somatic sense of what she was doing and how she was working with people and what was working, and got to ask a lot of questions. And so, those were 2 huge influences in my early career. And then, of course, being at Esalen, I had access to a lot of, like, masters and great teachers, like John Upledger, for example, who used to come and teach at Esalen, like Gabrielle Roth, who used to come and teach at Esalen, and Fritz Smith, and a lot of, just masterful teachers that I had the privilege, really, of spending time with, getting to know, um, working with one-on-one, and that was really super impactful for me. So those are just a few that I named, but there was many that I could name, yeah. I feel like I just got to drop into the Esalen Institute in this magical time when a lot of these folks, these masters, were still living and teaching at Esalen. And, I really got to firsthand um, be with them. And there's a lot of, like, transmission that happens with teachers that's less about what they're saying and more about what they're doing. And I really got that early on somehow, that just being in their presence was super impactful. And I'll just never forget just sort of being in awe of them, and also thinking, I want to do what they're doing. I want to understand and know what they're doing. How are they doing that?
Mm.
How are they how, I remember taking this visceral manipulation class with gosh, I can't remember his name now, but he could, across the room, he could look at someone and say, your liver is tight on the right side. And I was like, how is he even doing that? How is he looking across the room? And I just got so fascinated by this, seemingly magical insight that these folks were having. And I wanted to be able to do that. I wanted to understand what they were doing, what they were seeing. And so I just had the privilege, really, of following them around because I was young and single and at Esalen, and they were there. And so I just did. I just, absorbed everything I could from these folks, and including the founders of Esalen Massage, Brita and Deborah and Vicky and Peggy. And I had access to all of them um, all the time. And so I just sat with them and asked them lots of questions and assisted them and taught with them. And it really gave me a lot of insight into the development of SM massage and, their teachers and what they had learned too.
So what's really important for you just in this Esalen lineage, and what does collaboration between teachers mean to you?
Well, I've been contemplating this question a lot, Lily, because now our senior teachers are elders, and they are like the wisdom carriers of years of learning and working with these masters, from the 60s and 70s and 80s. And they're holding this lineage that I didn't have the privilege to be a part of because, I was still a child at that point. I didn't get to Esalen until the 90s, early 90s. But really, what collaboration for me means is, how can I be a bridge between those folks who are really, I consider, our elders, our lineage holders, and our wisdom keepers from that time, and the really the learnings and the lessons from that time, and be a bridge to sort of what I consider is the newer or more recent current understanding and learning. I've studied with Peter Levine and really gone into the somatic experiencing world in the last 7 years, I'd say. I'm really fascinated by the world of trauma and being trauma informed and what that means, and how that the newest research in the nervous system is showing us that while there's deep benefit and a lot from sort of the evolution of healing and growth and learning and the massage and bodywork field, there's a lot of new understanding that we need to bring into that wisdom and a new framework or new lens. And so for me, collaboration is how can we take the best of that, how we can begin to layer in this new piece of understanding of the nervous system and trauma, and how we can take these sort of the newest research and lay that lens in to sort of move us forward into this new evolution of Esalen massage, which has a lot more understanding of our times, our current times, and our and the nervous system as it is today.
So in July 2026, our gathering is going to take place in Switzerland. And I'm wondering, Robin, how would you invite practitioners to join from all over the world? What would your words be to them?
Oh, wow. That's a big one. I would say, why I'm joining and why I would hope others would join is because this Esalen massage has been not only a lifelong career path for me, so inadvertently, it wasn't something I planned. It was something that I always say just took me in and moved me not only through my own career, but my own healing process. And I have a tremendous amount of gratitude and appreciation for the practice. So why I'm joining personally is because I have this deep, deep love and appreciation and reverence for the work and the work that happens specifically at the Esalen Institute over these last 60 years. So I see this as like the first of hopefully many, but the first, and which makes it really special. The first time that we're really calling upon as some massage teachers and practitioners to come together in this shared experience of the work, and not only to collaborate from a work perspective, but collaborate from just like this human perspective of like we all have chosen this path of this work that speaks to us in a meaningful way. And there's a lot of shared community in that. There's a lot of shared appreciation in that. And in coming together and building our community in this way, I feel like we're creating this beautiful international network of a shared experience that's touched us all in some way. I want as many people to be a part of that as possible so that we can build and really strengthen our network across the globe. As the EMBA chairperson, that is one of my goals is how can we really create this strong network of practitioners and teachers across the globe to really get this work that is actually quite little, unknown in many regards out there because it is so deeply, it's such a simple but beautiful practice of, how do we be present with each other and how do we, sit with each other in that presence. And there's a lot of healing in that. I think the world needs more of that right now, that connection and healing. So I know I'm taking it meta, but that's really how I see it is like that's the essence of healing for me.